Hello, I'm Dr. David Rosensweet, and you've tuned into I Wonder Doctor Live. And in this half hour, we'll be receiving your questions over the phone. So if you call 888-502-8886, I'm happy, delighted, and will have fun answering any questions you might have about your health. At 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 1 hour from now, we'll have our Emotions Life call-in questioners. So if you have a question about your emotions, your life, stress, call in this number at 2 o'clock, an hour from now. And today I'd like to just talk about, as we in the beginning here, about the subject of insomnia. So picture this. Have you ever lost a night's sleep? Have you ever woken up too many times during the night? Did you ever wake up and you couldn't fall back to sleep? Have you ever done it more than one night in a row or several nights a week? If you have, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, how intensely potent and poignant it is to lose or have interrupted sleep. And there's so many things that relate to it. That's the good news, because there's always causes. And in the I Wonder Doctor video series, iwonderdoctor.line, iwonderdoctor.com, if you click on insomnia, there's a series of videos there that we talk about the many aspects of things that can interfere with sleep. But today, I'd like to talk about one of them. So picture your grandmother and grandfather, or your great-grandmother, or your great-great-great-great-great-great-great. Go back so far, a couple 100,000 years, to your ancestors as they were emerging onto the African tundra, because we all pretty much originated from there on this earth. And picture what they're doing. They're walking around during the day doing all the things they did. The sun is bright. The light is beautiful most of the time and very bright. There's a big ball in the sky called the sun. And they are cranking or relaxing, but gathering their food, hunting their food, lots of activity. And then comes the dusk and the light is turning down. And then comes the night, and the light is mostly turned off, except for starlight and occasional moonlight. And I'll tell you, we look like we're not connected to the earth, but we are rooted in the earth. Our nervous systems have been entrained over a couple 100,000 years to respond to the cycles of the earth. We are so connected, it's beautiful when you study those connections. And one thing we are really connected to is daylight and dark. And in daylight, we're active, and biologically, we're so active. We got so many biochemicals streaming through us to work our muscles and pump our heart and give us the strength and energy we need to do all the things we need to do during the day. And then as it starts getting dusk and that light starts turning down, our brains, our glands, they flip into a whole different system. New chemicals are produced. In fact, you've probably heard of one of them, melatonin. It's the principal output of a gland called the pineal gland at the base of our brain. And that melatonin output from that pineal gland, it is linked to light and dark. So, knowing that, if you're going to bed at night and you're having some difficulty sleeping, one thing that could really make a difference for you is don't leave the lights of your bedroom on. Go into a dark room. Some people have really found it wonderful to wear some eye shades and some eye mask that totally obliterates the light, because that will really help your internal physiology. Turn off the day and get the day out of our night and turn on that pineal gland and the melatonin. Another aspect of that is if you have to get up in the middle of the night to urinate, the best thing that can happen to you is you're sort of in a semi-conscious state there, that you're mostly still in sleep, but you go to the bathroom. The last thing you want to do is flip on a light, a bright light, because that can turn off your pineal gland's production of melatonin, because your body could read that that bright light in your bathroom or in your bedroom means the sun's up, you're back in daylight. And it turns on all the activity glands, including adrenaline and cortisol. These are major animators. They really get us up and going. So the moral of the story is, don't turn on the lights at night. Don't look at TV at night. Many people think they're helping themselves go to sleep by watching TV, but there's that bright white light coming off that screen, and they say, well, I guess I'll watch it a little longer because I'm not able to sleep. And they're keeping themselves awake by looking at bright white light coming off their TV screen. And in fact, in our bathroom, we have a little orange, tiny little orange night light. And what does that look like? A campfire light. When you think of pictures sitting around a campfire and you've gone camping and you have a nice nocturnal campfire going, it's orange, it's red, it's real low intensity. In fact, it's difficult to see much beyond that campfire. Well, we mimic that campfire in our bathroom by having a tiny little orange light. Orange, it's the perfect color to help you go back to sleep and not activate your daylight chemistry and not interrupt your pineal gland producing this lovely stuff called melatonin. Get the day out of your night. And now we've had several questions that have been emailed to us to I Wonder Doctor, and you can go to iwonderdoctor.com and ask the doc anything you want. And I'm going to read those questions unless there's a call-in, which in case I'll give priority to the call-in. That number is 888-502-8886. So we have a question from Joe. Hello, I'm a healthy 75-year-old American living in Southeast Asia. Ah, yes. Joe, we've been to Southeast Asia. It's amazing, parts of it. I have had morning cough, and I need to spit a lot for many months. I never drank or smoked. Also, I exercise 1 hour, 6 days a week. Any ideas about the coughing? Regards, Joe. Hello there, Joe, in Southeast Asia. Coughs. Sometimes they're hassle, but they're not that big of a deal. Other times they're more of a big deal, and sometimes they're a super big deal. And as a medical doctor, when I find something mysterious, well, I ask myself, well, if I were to miss something, what would I not want to miss that this could be related to? So I'll take myself to that bottom line when I'm interviewing someone who has a cough. And if this cough is not clearing up and is a little mysterious to you, if you can contact a medical doctor where you are, that can be really worth doing. And it can really put your mind at rest because they have tools to rule out the not good stuff. So I don't want to take you there first because coughs are so common and serious causes of coughs and spitting up, they're very rare, relatively speaking. But I do want to mention to you that the worst case scenario around a cough could be a lung cancer. And modern medicine has gotten so skilled at being able to address that, and especially in the early stages. So I'm not here to scare you, but I'm thinking like I do. Well, if I missed something, what would it be that would make a difference? And that would be the difference. Now let's leave that, because most coughs, and even coughs that are productive, we call it, when you're coughing up mucus and stuff, all kinds of stuff, they have other common origins. And you know, one thing about Southeast Asia and other places in the tropics is you can pick up some oddball bugs that those you want to find out about those too. So again, you're in the possible province of a medical doctor who knows how to test your sputum, what you're coughing up, knows how to put it on a culture. You could be coughing up molds, you could be coughing up yeast, you could be coughing up parasites. These are the rougher causes of cough. I hate to take you there as the first thing because I don't want to plant the seed that that's what it is, but at the same time, if it's not these things, then you got a lot more time and space to work it out. Sometimes you're allergic to something in your environment, pollens, all kinds of things that you can be allergic to in the air or even your foods. and it's causing a little constriction, an asthma type thing, of the muscles that surround your air tubes, and those make you very vulnerable to infections of all kind. Not bad germs, not rough germs, viruses, some bacterias that aren't super rough, but because there's not good blood flow and not good airflow to your lungs because of the constriction of asthma, you get prone to infections, and they can trigger the asthma all the worse. So that sort of gets to be a feed-forward type cycle that you want to interrupt there. So with coughs, that you're coughing something up, if it's at all possible for you to get to some professional medical help, I'd recommend it, Joe. It didn't sound like you've spent a lifetime with asthma or cough and that this is very unusual for you. So go there first. And the best thing you can ever hear from a doctor is, gee, I don't really know what's going on. They've gone through they're using the tools that they know how to assess what you got going on. They'll even do a chest x-ray. They might do a TB skin test, because there are things like even tuberculosis that are more prevalent in less developed countries. So I love the tools that a doctor has at their disposal. And if at the end of that visit or the end of those tests that they do on you, they go, gee, I don't know. Well, that's great news. Let it be mysterious, because if they don't know it, it's probably not troublesome, certainly at this phase. And then you get to deal with other issues that could be related to the cough. So seek thee out someone who knows about how to assess a cough. Good to hear from you, Joe. And here's a question from TN. I've spent more than 3 years living in the third world, tropical countries. I don't notice having digestive stomach issues. How can I know for sure? Yeah, we're talking about third world tropical countries today. This is a very good question, because tropical countries have a lot of critters that are present in the soil, in the air, in the food, and it's a lovely place for things to grow, and they do. And the interesting thing about the people that are native to these tropical cultures is they've come into balance with different bacteria, different parasites even, and so their bodies are really set up usually to handle them. And sometimes if they don't have good nutrition, even these native germs to those folks, they can grow out of control. And yet, when we have grown up in a different culture with different types of exposures or non-exposures, and we go over to the third world and we get exposed to the possible, let's just say, intestinal critters that we can get exposed to, like amoeba, other kinds of parasites. Oh my, there's worms there. There's all kinds of goodies growing in them there hills. And we don't necessarily do as well with them. Now, the most common thing that happens, and we used to call it the turista, is you get an acute bacterial infection of something that is a little rough, and you get diarrhea. And you even get tired, or you even get a fever, or you even get cramping diarrhea. And a lot of these things that tourists get, they're short-lived, and you poop a lot, and you're exhausted, and it's not that big of a deal. And yet, sometimes it is a bigger deal. Sometimes you've picked up amoebic dysentery, you've picked up a little tiny microscopic parasite called an amoeba. And when you get enough of those folks, your body just can't fight it off, and you can get some raucous diarrheas, you can get a lot of cramps, you can feel sick. And those, your body can handle them, and sometimes not so quickly, and they can move from acute phases to chronic phases, and that's no good. And they can disturb the 3.5 pounds of our wonderful, dear friends that we've grown up genetically with throughout the generations, these friendly bacteria that we love and need so well. And you hear more and more about these days, although I've heard about them ever since I went to medical school. They can disturb the lovely ecological balance that's taking place in your intestinal tract, and they can cause some problems there. And so in that case, if you go to a local medical professional, these people are often the most equipped to help you out because they're used to it. They've seen many of their own population show up in their office with diarrhea. They have microscopes. They can see amoebas in their microscope. They're good at poop. One of the best parasitologists I ever worked with was a Nigerian who traveled back and forth from Nigeria to Manhattan, and we used to send him FedEx first morning poops, so he got to look under the microscope with the freshest poop that there was, and he could see these amoebas and all kinds of things in there. And yeah, why did we choose him? Because they grew up looking under the microscope in their countries at the various critters that you can find in the third world. And so I'm saying, go to a local practitioner, because they know what the latest in diarrhea-producing organisms are. And very often they'll have an herb or they'll have a pharmaceutical medication that'll knock that stuff out. And you know what? It's worth knocking out. Because I've had many people who've spent a lot of time overseas and they come back to the United States and they got intestinal problems. And we don't want intestinal problems, even low-grade chronic inflammations in there. Those are a gateway to bigger problems. So most of these germs are manageable, and certainly manageable with certain herbal preparations or pharmaceutical medications. 3 or 4 times in my life I've taken these things and I've been very grateful for the medications. Find a medical professional. Now the other thing is, you may not have any kind of bowel disturbance. That's good, because these critters, when they're a problem, you usually feel it. But my recommendation to everyone, and this is how I treated my family on occasion, is that when they come from a third world country, having traveled there, getting a poop test is one of my favorite things to do, because if you can nip those things in the bud, so to speak, at an early stage, if you're picking up one of those critters, it's a really good thing. So even though you're in the third world, and TN, that's what I'd like to say to you, it's great that you're not having digestive or stomach issues. And how you can know for sure is to get a stool test. And if you're back in the United States, there are specialty stool labs in the United States. They grew up having this to be one of their principal missions. There's only 3 or 4 of them in the United States. Any functional medicine doctor or holistic medical doctor, they've been trained and they know where these labs are, and you ship these off to a different place where these labs are located in the United States. You ship off a poop, and my goodness, it's gotten so amazing. The state-of-the-art lab is checking out the DNA of the bugs in your poop, so it knows what an amoeba's DNA looks like. I mean, this is how sophisticated things have gotten these days, and I love that laboratory. I love that assessment. That test is worth doing. A functional medicine doc or a holistic medical doc, these people know about where with the 3 labs I'm talking about, where they are. And that's where you want to go. You don't want to go to your traditional hospital lab, because they're handling some of these epidemic things like Shigella and Salmonella, but they're not doing the kind of work that it takes to find some of these things that exist in the third world. Medicine, lot to it. And here's a question from Jonathan H. Hello, Dr. Rosensweet. Hello, Jonathan H. You said that eating cholesterol does not increase cholesterol. Please help me to understand this. I have high cholesterol. I'm on Crestor, which is raising my blood pressure. Well, there's a little bit of complexity to it medically, but the bottom line is, it's not like when you think of cholesterol coming from food, you think of the yellow in an egg yolk. But people aren't eating enough egg yolks to be the thing that's raising their cholesterol. There's also cholesterol in some other animal foods, and people just aren't eating enough in most cases. That's not what raises the cholesterol. Let's talk about what cholesterol is. It's a fat. It's one of several fats, and it's essential fat. Your body, most of the cholesterol that people have floating around their bloodstream and in other parts of our bodies is produced by your own body because we need it, because some of our most powerful hormones are made out of cholesterol. In fact, a side effect of cholesterol-lowering drugs, if you read it on the package insert, is, now hear this, death by suicide. Why? Because the people get their cholesterol way too low, they feel so bad and so desperate. Now this is very rare, but I wanted to let you know that having the right amount of cholesterol is a very, very important thing, and your body produces it. Now, what about getting high cholesterol? Is this a good thing? Well, the most common cause of that is dietary problems. Because if you eat simple carbohydrates, and if it's sweet, it's simple. And the American diet is riddled with simple carbohydrates. 300 years ago, it was pretty rare for people to get simple carbohydrates. Even sugar wasn't that available. And nowadays, it's everywhere, and people are so used to it. In the carbonated soft drinks, they're just loaded. One carbonated soft drink bottle has got 8 teaspoons of sugar in it. Oh my God. And why am I mentioning this? Because this is one of the most common ways that people get elevated cholesterol, because you eat all this carbohydrate, these simple carbohydrates, and what does your body do with it? Well, it might use a little bit of it for daily needs, but that which it doesn't need, it's got to store, and it does. And it takes those simple carbohydrates and it converts them to a storage form called fat, and one of the fats is cholesterol. So one of the more common ways people get elevated cholesterol is they're eating too much simple carbohydrates. This is the elephant in the room as far as cholesterol goes. So when I see an elevated cholesterol on a blood test, I want to know why that's elevated, because it's the cause of that elevated cholesterol that I'm more concerned about. Because simple carbohydrates, excessive amounts of it, that'll raise your insulin. And that'll wear down your insulin producing thing, and really that story is going to lead you to diabetes. So when I see an elevated cholesterol, I'm thinking more about, have they injured their insulin glucose thing? Well, look how deep in the weeds we are right now. It's a wonderful thing to get in the weeds, because this is one of the many causes of people getting into trouble. It's the overeating of simple carbohydrates, or even overeating of carbohydrates. And when you're young, you can do that for a decade or two, although my goodness, we're seeing diabetes in adolescents that isn't that juvenile diabetes, it's the adult type that it took them wearing down their diabetes mechanism to do it. So this is a big issue, and we address this very thoroughly in the videos in I Wonder Doctor, in both the diabetes section and the overweight section, because we care a lot about this. So the main thing about elevated cholesterol is, number one, what's causing it, because something is. And number two, is that elevated cholesterol a signal of elevated glucose, elevated insulin problems, and is the kind of cholesterol that's being produced the kind that injures the artery? There's a special kind, and we can test for that. Big subject. That's why we have so much importance to it. So subscribe to the Weekly School and I Wonder Doctor under diabetes. Why is it under diabetes? Because that's where the origin of it is. It's overeating of glucose and what the damage it does. And it's also in high blood pressure. So sign up to the Weekly School and you'll even learn more about it. And it's a great question. And, you know, I must say many doctors will debate me on this, but I don't prescribe these cholesterol-lowering drugs because they have other possible side effects. And if anyone is on a cholesterol-lowering drug, make sure you are taking a supplement called coenzyme Q10, or otherwise known as CoQ10, because where those cholesterol-lowering drugs mess up the system is they lower someone's CoQ10, and this is a story that would take me a little longer than I think is appropriate for this call-in show, but so long as you are on these cholesterol-lowering drugs, make sure you're getting 50 to 100 milligrams of CoQ10 Q10 a day. You can find that even in the I Wonder Doctor store. There's a lot of resources for that. And a big topic, I say go after the causes and assess the type of cholesterol that you have. Is it the hurtful kind of cholesterol, the kind that damages arteries, or is it not that big of a deal? It isn't so much the cholesterol, it's what's happening to the insulin glucose system. And so, yeah, wonderful question. You can learn a lot about this, and I love people learning about the things that are going on in their own body, because you're the one who got your hands on the levers to be able to make the change. And here's a comment, not a question, from Gina. Please tell Dr. R that I slept like a log for the past 3 nights. I can't believe it. I haven't slept at all at night in 10 years. The progesterone is amazing. Well, this is really about menopause, and it's also about sleep, and that's one of our topics. And good that you bring that up, Gina. And of course, this is one of the most rewarding things to me as a doctor. It has been all my career. When someone comes to me and says something like you just said, Gina, I haven't slept in 10 years. And now I'm sleeping every night. I mean, it's so rewarding to hear that. It's just so exciting to hear people get something that makes a difference for them. And yes, for those of you who have sleep disturbance and you're in the midlife, you're perimenopausal, that's a little bit before menopause or in the middle of the transition or after your periods have ceased, you lose that progesterone. And if I were to inject the right amount of progesterone into myself intravenously, I could be put to sleep so deep that surgery could be performed on me. That's how calming progesterone is. Well, the flip side of that is when a woman stops producing adequate progesterone, which she always does, usually the most common thing women think of is when their periods start getting irregular and then they stop. That's pure menopause when they pure stop. They've lost about 95% of their progesterone. They start getting sleep disturbance like wild. In fact, you can almost bank on it that a high percentage of women, when they start losing their period, their progesterone's gone and they don't sleep well for that reason. They don't sleep well for low estrogen reasons. And you restore those two properly, they get their sleep back. And as I was mentioning in the beginning of the show, all you got to be is someone, think of yourself, just lose a night's sleep, or sleep poorly one night. And then go back to back, and you lose sleep for 2 nights. And then go maybe 3 nights a week that you don't sleep well. Or maybe there's 10 years, like Gina said here, that she didn't sleep well. Oh my God. This is life-changing. And sometimes in women, it's as simple as restore their progesterone. And a lot of times in women, they start losing their progesterone 10 years before their periods cease. I'm talking about the early 30s. There's reasons for this. We covered this in my book, Happy Healthy Hormones. We cover it in the menopause series, and I Wonder Doctor. But the bottom line is women start losing their progesterone, and as they do, of the many things that can happen, including their bones, their moods, progesterone's the great calmer. You lose progesterone, you start developing this mystical anxiety. Yes, I've got the usual challenges of life, but now I have anxiety, and I didn't have that in my 20s and early 30s, and now I do. Yeah, well, you could just be getting lowered progesterone for a lot of reasons. And why I'm emphasizing this is we teach doctors how to treat women in menopause in our menopause method, menopausemethod.com. And one of the things is one of our major missions is to help women realize that as early as their early 30s, they could lose just enough progesterone to start having mood issues, sleep issues, the great calmer. If any of you women out there have been pregnant, you know that sometimes some women feel so calm during times during their pregnancy because they're loaded with progesterone and it is so calming. So one of our missions is to help younger women learn early on that if they start getting this anxiety that doesn't make a lot of sense to them, or they start having sleep disturbances in their mid-30s, they can get over-the-counter progesterone in a health food store. There was a wonderful, wonderful doctor that made that available 30 years ago. And you start taking progesterone, and it's so good for you. And if that helps you sleep better in your early 30s, and that improves your mood, you have a progesterone deficiency, and it's so safe. It's so good for you. So that over-the-counter is the right strength to be very safe for the public. So Gina, you opened up Pandora's sleep box there because it's such a big deal, and you know, I just couldn't. It just warms the cockles of my heart to know that 10 years not sleeping, and now you're sleeping. Progesterone is amazing. Well, this is our time for I Wonder Doctor Live, the general medical questions today, and it's been a pleasure being with you. So for now and until next week, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, when we're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. It's been very good to be with you, and I wish you all good health. And if you're not in